was a lot of fun. Half the congregation just went up there with Marcia. That's cool. I would like I would like three. That's wonderful. I like seeing all the kids. That's neat. Boy, that's what we want all the time. A couple of weeks back, I touched on the passage of Zephaniah 3:17 that I read around the table just a little bit ago, and it goes like this: "The Lord thy God in the midst of thee is mighty; he will save; he will rejoice over thee with joy; he will rest in his love; he will joy over thee with singing." See, the point at that time, the point then was to show that God has emotions. We forget that, except for anger. We all remember that God gets mad, but we don't think about the rest of the rest of the emotions that he actually experiences as God. See, the idea was, of course, at that time, that people just find it easier to trust somebody that they know is emotionally involved with them. If we like to, when we talk about falling in love, we mean that we are emotionally attached to this person. And when that's gone, we feel the lack. Well, that's not gone with God. It's this passage is the equivalent of a Valentine card or a bouquet of flowers with a note from God. He says, I really love you guys. I love you a lot, really. Honest. And so here's the flowers. And so here's the passage. See, and I want to revisit this passage. It's kind of a jumping off point for. I want to go in a different direction from it now. See, that's true. Love can be expressed without the emotion. Loving acts can be performed even without any emotional feelings being attached to them at all. We've been taught that love, it really consists of somebody's loving actions more than any sort of fondness for that person. See, some might even present the idea that emotion doesn't enter into it at all. That God's just not mushy, he's not sentimental. Sometimes God is even presented as having a heart as cold and sharp as a surgeon's knife. And that happens sometimes, the way he's presented. Okay? And if that were really the case, see, then, why did the Holy Spirit have the prophet write this passage in Isaiah 49:15 where God compares himself to a woman with a newborn baby, and he's saying, I'm never going to abandon you. It's like that, except more so. I'm not going to abandon you guys. I see, the comparison without the emotion has no power. It has to taking into account the feelings of the mother for her newborn for the power of the comparison. God, I feel like that about you guys, but even more so. It's more than that. So it's God-sized emotions. We have ours, and God has big emotions. And in fact, see, it seems like in this passage of Zephaniah 3:17, God might even get a little excessive, by our standards, and his expressions of love. See, if that's possible. For instance, in this last phrase of verse 17, see, we read this phrase. He says, "He will joy over thee with singing." See, and these words, joy and singing, they're translations without the emotional content of the Hebrew. We don't have the equivalent in English, like the word translated as joy. See, and it's a Hebrew word that actually describes a spinning around, under the influence of some violent emotion. That's what the word in Hebrew means, see, but we translate it as joy. See, this is out of Strong's Concordance. You can go and look it up yourself if you want to. The translators, they didn't include all of that. So they just said joy. But they could have said jumping for joy, I suppose. That would be the equivalent. He's jumping for joy. See, our translation, it can be lacking in emotional content. But what are you going to do? It's Hebrew. We're English. If you tried to include all the various shades of meaning in the Hebrew, we'd be lugging around a whole set of encyclopedias, instead of just bringing a Bible to church. They had, this is the way things work out when you translate things. Anyway, so about that word translated as singing in verse 17, he's going to joy over thee with singing. In our language, singing, it kind of implies some ordered series of words accompanied by a melody. We think of maybe a lullaby or something like that. But if you go back to Strong's Concordance, that's not what it really is. See, the word is listed as 7440, and what do we find? The word means what? A creaking sound. Huh? You know, it says creaking. It means a creaking or a shrill sound. That's what the word is. See, the Hebrew word is describing a sound and not a song, really, as we understand a song. You know, the idea is an inarticulate shrieking for sheer joy. No words at all, no order at all, just a great cry of emotion. That's what God's describing his feelings. That's how he's describing his feelings. See, this is God revealing his feelings for us and to us. See, I want you to understand how I feel about you. And it's kind of like when the Holy Spirit, makes intercession for us with groaning that is beyond words. It's just an emotional involvement that God has for us. That's in Romans 8:26. Now, I said all that to say this. See, it's apparent that God doesn't have any pride, right? No pride at all. See, he's exposed his weakness for us. Now, he's exposed this weakness for us, for all the universe to see. This is how I feel. Oh, he just opens himself up, and he's expressed himself in the tenderest words of endearment. He has exposed his innermost feelings for his own creation to gawk at. That's what he's doing here. And so pride can't endure to display its weakness for somebody like this. You know how pride is. It's really enclosed in itself. But God has no pride, so he does that. He just opens himself up for everybody to see who he is. See, when Jesus claimed to be meek and lowly of heart, he was talking about God. Meek, lowly, unassuming, modest, humble. Nobody thinks of God in these terms. And I want to emphasize this point about God as we turn. There's 3 scriptures we want to take a quick peek at. And the first is going to be on the screen. I'm just going to describe the second 2. And I don't even have time to read the verses. We don't have a lot of time. So the first is in Daniel 7, 9, and 10. And here he's talking about, when John saw Jesus in his glorified state in the first chapter of Revelation, he fainted dead away. See, God in the power of his glory is terrifying. See, and so here in Daniel, his throne is like fire. This is Daniel describing what he saw. A stream of fire is coming out from before his throne. 10 million standing before him. See, in Isaiah, he sees the same thing in Isaiah 6, 1 through 5, and he has the same reaction as John does. Remember, John, he just passed out. I fell at his feet as dead. When he sees Jesus in his glory, he just passes out. And so here's Isaiah, and he's terrified. Oh, no, I'm doomed. I've seen God. I'm a man of unclean lips. I live in a land of people with unclean lips. I'm too sinful to look at God. I've had it. It's over for me now. That's what he thought. That's what he expressed. See? And so, and then you have Revelation chapter 4, Revelation chapter, we don't put those up there either. The whole chapter, and you have the same scene in chapter 5, and chapter 7, and on and on. See, and so we see these same scenes at the throne in heaven, and it's zillions of people standing around and praising God and all that. See, so here's God on his throne. He's high, he's august, he's majestic. He's surrounded by millions of angelic beings. Crowns are being cast down before the throne. And yet, see, the same Almighty God in these 3 scenes, and many more like it, is the same God that Jesus named as being meek and holy in heart. This is Matthew 11:29. Take my yoke upon you, is what Jesus says, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. See, what's going on here? It's hard to see just how the words meek and lowly apply to these scenes of heaven. Okay? So you step back from the scene for a second. You get back from these. And when we read these things, see, it's hard for us not to visualize ourselves as being in the midst of that crowd, praising God and singing something. But step back, take on the role of an observer, Is God really meek and lowly in heart? Or was Jesus just saying that? See, who is God really? And so it's kind of a dichotomy here between the scene of all, fiery thrones and all that, and angels and people praising God, and God being meek and lowly. You see the problem. One of my brothers, he's not a churchgoer at all. I'm not going to name his name, but he asked the same question. He expressed the question in very disrespectful terms. He said, now I don't know why I should go to church every Sunday just so I can kiss God's rear end. Except that I toned it down. He was worse than that, And so what you do is you edge away in case the lightning comes, for him. I don't want to get struck at the same time, but man, that's pretty blasphemous. But the question is, it reveals something about my brother. You know what it reveals? It reveals that he doesn't know who God is. He doesn't understand. He has no idea. See, and Satan doesn't know who God is either. See, he says in Isaiah 14:14, remember this famous passage, the 5 I wills of Satan, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. And, you can see his chest puffing out and all that. I'm going to sit on that throne. I'm going to be surrounded by admiring beings, millions of them. I'm going to listen to millions telling me how wonderful I am. See, this is Satan talking. I'm going to speak, and zillions of angels are going to hasten to fulfill my every whim. I'm going to be like God. So that's what he said. That's what he's thinking, right? But neither my brother nor Satan understand God at all. See, both of them are assuming that God gets his strokes from hearing his name praised. See, that God's having his ego massaged as millions and millions bow down before him, as the elders cast their crowns before him. See, that is my brother and Satan. See, they think that God is like they are. They think he's the same. See, they think that God is like they would be if they were on the throne. That's what they're thinking. That's what they're thinking. They think that God is filled with pride, is what they think. See, and I kind of think that a lot of Christians, in their heart of hearts, they think the same thing about God. That my brother and Satan think. That the songs are sung and prayers are offered so as not to offend God's pride. See, even Christians sometimes make God to be in their own image. It happens all the time. I know at least one Christian who thought that might be true about God. That's me. In my heart of hearts, you're thinking back, not understanding the God I was worshiping. In the first chapter of Hebrews, the writer points to Christ. He says, look, Jesus is the express image of the person of God. This is Hebrews 1-3. That is, Jesus is who God is. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I am God. And you see, the irony here is that the persons who have nothing on their own, they didn't create themselves. They didn't have anything to do with that. They have nothing of their own. My brother and Satan, see, they've received everything they have from God, and yet they're lifted up in their own pride against God. Well, that's kind of... But God, see, he's the one who gave creation all its being, who alone, he's the only one who has reason to be filled with pride. In fact, he don't have any at all. That's the irony. The person who has the right to pride doesn't have any, and the people who have no right to pride have it all. What's that? What's that? I am meek and lowly in heart, says the one who is the express image of God. That's in Matthew 11:29, by the way. Even as Christ is presenting himself to the Jewish nation as its rightful king, he uses the same word again. Matthew 21:5, tell ye the daughter of Zion. This is when Jesus is coming into Jerusalem, Palm Sunday. Behold, thy king, I'm your king, cometh unto thee meek. Meek. I'm coming meekly, sitting up on an ass, the colt of the foal of an ass. See, the king isn't lifted up. This king is not lifted up with pride. He doesn't go with his chest puffed out. This king is coming to you humbly. What is that? So you go back to these three scenes in your mind, see where God's presented in his majesty and in his terror, because he's scary. His power is. And we know that God can't be motivated by pride since he hasn't any. And the question remains, what in heaven's name is going on here then? If all this is not for God's benefit, not for his pride, we know that can't be true. God knows perfectly well who he is. He knows who he is. He knows his worth. Then why all the singing and glorying and fire and lightnings and thrones and crowns and all that? Why does he even have a display like that? See, all this is part and parcel of creation, by the way. There was nothing before creation. None of this stuff existed. God got along perfectly well without it. Didn't need it. It seems reasonable to conclude then if it's not for the benefit of God, then God must have set it all up for our sake. Huh? Yeah. See, God must have set up his throne for our sakes. He must have sat down in the throne for our sakes. He must have placed the angels around the throne to point out his holiness for our sakes, for us. He must have assumed the mantle of authority for our sakes, and you bet he did. He did. Give it some thought. What caused the fall in the first place? You remember that conversation back in the garden? You shall be like gods. Remember that? We know who said that. We know why he said it too. How about a taste of pride? Satan asked Eve, you too can be a god. That's you can be admired. You can be worshipped. You can even worship yourself. Hey, what could be better than being a god? How cool is that? That's what Satan's telling Eve. See, but the lie behind the lie is that God's the same as us. That in his heart, God is like us. That's the lie. See, we're used to living with pride. Do you know anybody that doesn't have any pride at all? It's pretty rare. We're so used to having pride in ourselves and our accomplishments, we even have pride in earning our own salvation. See, I don't believe that's even possible for anybody in this world to imagine what it's like to live without any speck of pride at all. We may think we're out without pride, but look how hard it is to be patient with someone who offends us. We struggle against that all the time. That's one of the sins that we talk about. In our own hearts when we commune with God. Oh man, I wish I hadn't said that or the other, gotten impatient and all. When we come around the table, these are the sins that we think about. It's easy for us to get offended. The root of that feeling, though, of being offended it's not our sense of justice. We tell ourselves it is. That's not right. It's our pride. It's our sense of our own importance that leads us to be offended. How dare he cut me off at the freeway? I want to pinch his head off for that. That's bad. He's bad. Why? Because he offended me. How long this lady? How dare her? Why didn't she have her checkbook out if she's going to write a check already? Why in the world is she? And she's slow, and I got to get out of here. And she's in the front of the check stand, and I can't get past. And she's just writing her check. As describing my mom. But she's okay. But everybody else's mom's not. That's because I'm in the check. I got to go. I got stuff to do. My work is important. They're getting in my way. What do you mean accusing me of being prideful? It's my life. It's my choice. I did it my way. We're steeped in this stuff. We can't get out of it. As Jude says, the angels even left their first estate. Why? Why did they do that? Satan said, I will be like the Most High. And the old serpent tells Eve, you too can be a god. Wouldn't it be neat to be a superstar in sports and have all those people around you, telling you how great your playing is, and they're interviewing you and admiring you and wishing they could be like you, and you get these really huge $1 million checks for playing basketball or something. Maybe you'd like to be a supermodel. All those cameras flashing for you, your pictures like on the cover of a magazine, and people watching you strut down the walkway wearing these clothes, but really you're, half of it is strutting your body around, right? Little girls wanting to be you. Wouldn't that be cool? Or an actor, or a singer, people fighting over pieces of your clothing that you throw out into the audience. That'd be kind of neat. Or even anybody ever think about being an apostle? Man, that would be so cool. Sick and deformed people crowding around you, hoping to be healed by just your shadow or a hanky that somebody brought for you to touch. How dare you get in my way? My work is important. These people need my touch. They need my shadow. It happened to Peter, Acts 5 and 15. What about a great preacher? Coming around to me, too. Oh, no. I want people to think I'm really, really deep. I want you guys to think that about me. I want all of you to admire me. I want people to come to Christ because of things I say. Yeah? I want people to fill these benches and stand around outside just to try to hear the sound of my voice. Wouldn't that be cool? See, think I don't have pride? You think that I'm not subject to that universal human condition? I am, just as much as anybody else. See, it is universal, and it's the same for me. Okay? See, but in all this talking about passion and pride, something kind of slipped my mind. I kind of forgot that I'm not really a preacher. See, I'm a carpet binder. I never went to preaching school to do this stuff. I put edges on carpets. It's not much of an ability, but I'm pretty good at it. Pretty good. That's my glory. It's not much, but even as small as this glory is, I didn't give it to myself. That small bit of glory that I wear as being a pretty good carpet binder, that glory is borrowed from God. That's where I got it. Ooh. See, and here's the deal. See, there's nothing more corrosive to the souls of created beings than praise and admiration and compliments and being worshipped. Whoa. That stuff is deadly to us. Just deadly. It's radioactive. It's poison. See, it swells our tendency to pride like nothing else does. And you ask any supermodel, ask Satan for that matter. Ask Adam and Eve and ask yourselves, what is it in me that makes me want so much to be respected and looked up to? See, so if all these angels standing around the throne worshiping God and all these saints casting down their golden crowns and singing, if it's not for God's ego, then what's going on? Well, there's more to God than just meekness and lowliness. What about truth? God loves truth. He hates pride. So firstly, what's happening around the throne is truth. That's truth happening around the throne. What's going on is, see, nobody made themselves. No one gave himself his own glory. Those of us who have great beauty, that's our glory, but we didn't give it to ourselves. And those who have great athletic abilities, they didn't give that to themselves. It was given to them. It's a gift. Those with great intellect, same thing. That's their glory, but that was given to them too. Okay? See, all of our attributes that we glory in, they're all from God. We all wear borrowed glory. See, that's the truth. That's the truth. It's all borrowed. And God's presenting himself as the source of all glory, not for ego's sake, but for truth's sake. It's just the simple truth, and that's all. That's all. See, no lie can enter into God's kingdom, right? He loves truth. And for anyone to appropriate the glory given to him as if he himself is its origin or source, that's a lie. By showing himself as the source of all creation, God's simply demonstrating truth. That's true. And preventing a lie. The next thing is to live without appreciation for something given, to live as if we had obtained or by our own efforts what we have in truth been given. See, we live an uncaring life. We live wickedly to do that. Living without thanksgiving, it's a great sin against the truth. It is. God's presenting himself as the proper object of thanksgiving to save us from living that way. He only needs to do that because he created us. Otherwise, it wouldn't matter. God's protecting us from the corrosive effects of pride by presenting himself as a proper object of worship. Hey, preventing us from worshiping ourselves. You're not going to do that in God's presence. Oh, when God's here, we all, we're not going to think of ourselves as anything, and that's proper. See, all these scenes are for our sakes as well as God's sake. He already knows who he is. He doesn't need us to tell him that, but he can only be satisfied with the truth. And if who God is isn't acknowledged, you know what happens? God lives a lie also. That's not going to happen. That can't be. Another thing is what we need, and what we all created beings need, we need a pair of shoulders that are broad enough, that are strong enough to bear up under all that praise. And creation is certainly praiseworthy, so how much more the Creator, and still not be corrupted by all that praise and admiration. The only ones who fit to bear the responsibility, God is providing us those shoulders. Those are His shoulders we're describing. And us, along with all the angels, all creation, we need the one with those strong shoulders to sit on the throne and bear the weight of government. The only one who's fit to do that, to bear the responsibility of ordering creation, is God. We need God to do that for us. Can't do it ourselves. And that's why, when Nadab and Abihu, anybody remember those names? Nadab and Abihu, they offered strange fire and the incense before God. The fire came out and burned them up. See, what happened? They disrespected God before the people, and they were killed for it. They had disdained the only one who could provide the government that all creation needs, and they did it before the same people. Here's the same people that God's training to follow Him. They assaulted the necessary respect and honor that leads to submission to the leadership of God. And their deaths were an illustration of the damage that disrespect to God can do to creation. Okay? And that's why Moses told Aaron, he said, "This is what the Lord spoke, saying, by those who come near me, I will be treated as holy. And before all the people, I will be honored." This has happened in Leviticus 10 and 3. Honoring God is vital for the truth. It's vital for our sakes. We've got to do it. It hadn't anything to do with God's ego at all. He didn't have an ego for that matter. It's just necessary for the well-being of creation. See, all those angels, all that praise, all the thanksgiving and shouting and singing is to fill our need for purpose. And, we need, why are we created? Why are we created? For God's purpose, for His enjoyment. We need somebody to thank for our glory, someone to look to for example and leadership, somebody to sit on the throne in truth. He has the right to be there because He's the only one that belongs there. See, God intends to further glorify us. That's going to come, But the one on the throne, He serves to remind us that all of the glory, even all those crowns He sets on our heads and all that, it's borrowed. And there's never any pride to be had in wearing borrowed glory. As long as we acknowledge the one who gave us that glory in the first place, we can wear that without pride. See, so you have to kind of imagine a crown. See, everybody gets a crown. You get to heaven, you get a crown. Ooh, put it on your head. Feels good, right? Looking good. Maybe I even get to glow in the dark. I've wondered about that. How right? That'd be kind of cool. See, but every time we approach the throne, we got to take it back off and present it back to Him. Lord Jesus, I think this belongs to You rightfully. It's Yours. We just get to wear it. That's all. That's all that happens. And so in Revelation, that scene happens in the Bible. Revelation 4, 9 through 11, when those living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to Him that sat on the throne, who liveth forever and ever, that's God. The 4 and 20 elders, they fall down before Him that sat on the throne, and they worship Him that liveth forever and ever. They tell the truth about who He is. And they cast their crowns before the throne, saying, I don't think they throw them down. That would be kind of disrespectful. I get the picture, they put them down. Saying, Thou art worthy. Of course He is. He was the one that made it. O Lord, to receive glory, honor, power, it all belongs to You. We all got it from You. For Thou hast created all things, including us. And for Your pleasure they are. For Your pleasure we are created. That's our purpose. We were created to be loved by God and to give Him the thanksgiving that He just deserves in truth. It's an acknowledgement of truth. That's what's happening here. God's lowly in heart. He's also holy. He's our friend. He's also God. He's our judge, but at the same time, He's our Father. He lives with us. But at the same time, he's living with us and in us. He's on the throne. Happens all the same time. You see, in each of us, we have different personalities. We've got different views, different backgrounds, different experiences, and we're going to see God somewhat differently. I'm going to see God differently from the person sitting in the chair next to me. That's the way things are. We're going to, each of us going to emphasize one or the other of the various attributes of God, and we're going to diminish others. It's just inevitable. Sometimes, even diminishing some of those attributes to the vanishing point. That's bad. But I wanted to remind you, or to point out to those who've never thought about it, that in addition to his awesome presence, God's also a person. I didn't say a human being. He is Jesus, but God is a spirit even before that. Not human. He's a person, though. That's where we got our personhood from. From a person, from God. And in his heart, he's a meek and kind person, without any pride or any arrogance whatsoever. But see, as we contemplate the humbleness of God, we can't forget his fearsome holiness. Got to keep that in mind too. Can't mistreat God. And when contemplating his terrifying presence, we shouldn't forget that this universe-creating power is being wielded by a supremely humble spirit, God. And the point of all this is just to get to know God, to keep in mind who he is. We need to know the God we worship. And if we don't understand his motives, if we don't understand his character, if we don't understand his methods, how do we worship him in spirit and in truth? How do we trust a God we don't know or we don't understand? It's really hard to do that. Okay, and that's the purpose of this, is just to that's why he wrote the Bible. I want you guys to know me. Get to know me. You're going to like me. Yes, we do. But the more we know about God, the easier he is to like and to love. And that like will turn into love eventually. For somebody brand new, just comes out of the water, all he's doing is escaping judgment. He doesn't think anything about loving God. That comes later. He learns to do that. We learn to do that. And that's what we're doing now. Okay, so it's time for the invitation. All right, so how about the invitation to the humble God? We don't think of God that way, but we're invited. He's presenting himself. Can you learn to like me? Can you learn to love me? He's humble. He presents himself. He gives us we can choose. What do you want? Turn your back on this humble God, or learn to love him. And that's what this allows. Let him save you. Let him wash you. He's really anxious to do it. In fact, he died for the privilege.